I'm going to open the council meeting for the 7th of July, and this is a council meeting convened to hear submissions on the Founders Theatre report. So first, I've got an apology from Councillor Forsyth. Checking, I saw Councillor Mallett, he's here, and I'll take one as Councillor Gallagher for lateness. I'll move that, seconded by Councillor Young. All those in favour, against, carried. The agenda is, so just so that we're clear, councillors, you've got a lot of hard copied information, and I know I can hear Councillor McPherson saying, what about the online? And I agree. The General Manager is going to explain to us where you can look at the submissions online shortly, but you should have the run sheet or the hearing schedule, times that have been allocated. So I'll move the agenda, seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favour, against, carried. Any declarations of interest? No. And of course we don't have a public forum. Right, so we are on to item 5, which are the submissions. Now just a couple of things for the members of the public. Councillors have read the submissions. So you don't need to worry that we haven't. We actually have been, and we have been talking yesterday about how many pages there were, but we have read them, so that's number one. Number two, most councillors look at them online, so they are not, you know, looking at their computer and other things. They're actually looking at the information online, and it's a more economical way to do it. So if you see everyone appearing in at their computers, it's because they're actually looking at the documentation and information. Secondly, thirdly, the run sheet is as is, but councillors will know that often people don't come, you know, for a variety of reasons. They might have wanted to speak, but circumstances change. So it's likely, councillors, that, you know, people will slot in. Now, as you will see, this is down for some hearings today and possibly over to tomorrow, but I'm already informed that some people have already signalled they won't now be speaking. So rest assured, staff are contacting people to move them. I think it would be fair to say if we can hear the submissions all today within an appropriate time frame, then that would be a good outcome. So you don't, staff will be monitoring that through the day and may be moving people around. So we'll just work with that. People have been allocated times, as you can see, and we will be keeping to time. And there's a variety of reasons for that. Number one, the submitters have been told the time, so they've prepared for those times. Number two, for a productive meeting, we need people to keep to time. So that means we've got a responsibility in that as well, because if people have been allocated, for example, 5 minutes, if they use their full 5 minutes for speaking, there won't be time for us for questions. Now, I've got a bit of discretion on that, obviously. If there's a particular point that we may want clarified, fair enough. But we do have to be tough, so I will be tough on the time frame. Submitters are being told that they will be told to stop at the end of the allocated time. Thanks, so don't, and I think we've run that like that in the past pretty well. We want to give everyone a fair go, and therefore we've got to treat everyone fairly. I've had staff give you, councillors, just the, the actual document that went out. And the reason I've done that is because people might refer to that. And also I think it's just useful to have it so that we can, see what, just remind ourselves about what did go out. There's breaks during the day, that's all fine, we know how it works, there's a bit of flexibility, everyone around the table here is well used to how these processes work, and it is being broadcast over the webcam so other people can tune in. All right, so I think there's nothing else to say about the process, and hopefully it'll all work out good. So I'm now just going to hand over to the General Manager just to make a couple of comments. You've got a report. The report's pretty straightforward and easy to read, but in amongst this book, I did locate it. It was on a few pages in, was the summary of the actual submissions themselves, but you've been handed out this morning an updated one because there were a couple of errors. So I'll hand over to the General Manager, and if you can also, Sean, tell us where to find the submissions online, because it's a different process to what we've been used to in the past.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, councillors. So as you're aware, the public consultation process being extensive, 2,279 submissions. They closed last Thursday, the 30th of June. So some of the hard copy submissions weren't actually received by staff until this Monday. And so you received a copy of all those submissions on Tuesday, and that's the large document which Her Worship referred to. 60 of those submitters have indicated they want to be heard at a public hearing, and that's who you'll be hearing from today. So that hearing schedule was circulated yesterday. It's also available online, and it's online under our council agendas and minutes and the hearing schedule. On that hearing schedule, the electronic document, the submission number, which is the third column, that links through to the submission itself and the attachments related to it. That's if you're viewing it electronically. If you're viewing it in hard copy, there is a reference to the submission report page number, which is in the right-hand column, and that directs you to the page number of the submission in the full submissions report. I would also like to advise that last night we discovered an error in that with 39 of the submissions, the submitter had not actually chosen an option in the drop-down box in the Have Your Say. So in those cases, the submission report incorrectly defaulted to demolish. So the memo circulated to you this morning outlines that. It doesn't affect any of the submitters that we will be hearing from today. And we will reissue the submissions report in the next day or so with those submissions corrected.
Right, that's it?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Councillor King, question?
So are the graphs at the bottom inclusive of the demolished or exclusive?
So given, I should just sort of point out that this was, the memo was sort of drafted this morning after the error was discovered last night. So the graph on the left was the original, the way that the submissions were originally categorised, and the graph on the right.
What it was?
Yeah, what it was.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so the percentages haven't materially changed. It's sort of within the decimals, yeah, but the total numbers have changed slightly. Yeah.
Okay, is everyone clear on that? Old pie chart, new pie chart, bottom of the page. Marginal, really, 1%, I think. All right. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So we're going to kick off, and the first speaker, of course, is Sarah from Creative Waikato. So, as you know, everyone, Creative Waikato were asked by the council to hold the focus groups and to convene some processes for us. So, Sarah's going to come along and present that report, and there'll be time for questions on that. So, Sarah, we've allocated you half an hour, which, I mean, your report was really good. We could read it all and everything. So yep. We'll hand over to you, and you can kick us off. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship and councillors, for this opportunity. It's a tremendous process for us as well, and I think you'll agree, helpful for everybody. I might speak first briefly to our submission, and then perhaps we can have a conversation about the work that we did. and why we came to the conclusions of the submission. So the official submission of Creative Waikato, based on what we learnt during the focus groups, our recommendation is to build a new theatre for Hamilton, progress and investigate feasibility for an aspirational, fit-for-purpose and future-proofed theatre. But there's more than one point. Number 2 is, in that work, to carefully consider general theatre and classical music needs independently. 3 is to identify and implement an interim solution, and we can talk to that when we talk about the findings of the focus groups. That's particularly essential for community groups that might be getting founders back to a minimum operating standard, if at all feasible. And number 4 is note that there was a strong preference within the focus groups that if there is a new build, that in some way founders is not demolished but can be repurposed to continue to support the community again, if structurally feasible. I would just like to add, and this may assist in clarifying point 3, which was identify and implement interim solutions, is that there are a number of suggestions there. Number 1 is to support Clarence Street Theatre and Meteor, if appropriate, with technical equipment which was removed from founders, lighting and sound, curtain blacks, etc., that will be used by groups that have had to move from founders to Clarence Street. Currently they need to hire in that additional equipment at significant cost. Number 2 is investigate an interim and affordable community rate for use at Claudelands for large community events that can in no way feasibly move to Clarence Street, and that's the likes of kapahaka events, large ethnic events and other large creative events. And the 3rd point is use the opportunity to engage in some active research, evaluate the feasibility of ongoing community-based differential pricing model for Claudelands for those large community events. But yes, if we start to discuss the findings of the focus groups, that may help clarify why we're making some of those findings and recommendations. Overall, it was, as I say, it was immensely positive and highly engaged process. We originally started off by thinking we would do 5 focus groups. We ended up with 12. 2 reasons for that. One was that immensely high uptake on the invitation to participate in these groups, and the second one was as we recognised the need to dig deeper into the subsections of the creative sector. What we did strategically was to cluster them by genre within the arts sector, because we know, for example, orchestras have very different needs to musical theatre. There was no point having a bunch of people in a room arguing on whether a fly tower was a necessary thing or not. What we wanted to do was really understand within that genre why they were making the recommendations they were and what they needed within that particular recommendation. So that's how we did it. So we subsections were orchestras, choral, theatre, musical theatre, music, youth, and in youth they really are future users. Most people had some experience with Founders Theatre, but we're really looking at the people who are likely to be the people who are engaged in the facility in the future. Toi Māori, kapahaka, ethnic groups, dance schools. We also ended up running a session with front of house staff because we wanted to get a better sense of end user experience as well, because it was so integral into the comments we were getting from each sub-genre. I make a comment which you've read, the handy analogy. The performing arts sector is made up of genres, just like ball-based games in the sports sector is made up of codes. Each genre, like each code, has particular equipment and environments for practicing and performing, and they have different audiences who have different preferences. Asking all performing arts groups to agree on one solution in Founders is a bit like asking rugby, cricket and netball to agree on one field in which they can play and for all of their supporters to like it. So fortunately, that's not what we're asking. What we wanted to know was how each of those groups responded to the options presented for Founders and what they could see within the solution for their sector. So unsurprisingly, there was no one solution that worked from all. There was a spectrum from refurbish quickly to rebuild aspirationally. Not surprisingly, there wasn't a single person who supported demolish. It's difficult to sum it up, and at the risk of overgeneralising, I would say that at the end of the spectrum of build new, you're looking at the art forms that have professional and semi-professional requirements and highly technical requirements to do what they do. So we're talking about orchestras, and we're talking about sophisticated musical theatre, and in that spectrum. So these are the groups that have very specific acoustic performances for their works, to work for their audiences, and physically technical challenges. At the end of refurbish, it's really the grassroots community. These are the ones that are saying, you know what, Founders was fine. Gary, I noticed your daughter's walked in with Limelight Academy sweatshirt on her back, which is adorable. Now, that's exactly the kind of groups
That's
that...
not a commercial endorsement, is it?
But those are the groups that were using Founders frequently. They were very happy with it as it was, and they're dealing with youth, so they just want that facility back because of the size of their operations and the size of the community they support. Clarence Street is not big enough. So at that end, and it's youth and ethnic groups who really need a stage and seating. So they're keen on refurbish and do it quickly, but they're probably this. If you're going to say where is the weighting is definitely at build new. And it's not just because of the art form, it is because of the aspirations these groups and individuals and artists have for a city, to have the kind of arts infrastructure which is deserved of a population of our size, that is deserved of a sophisticated population of our kind. They're very eager to see our entertainment precinct integrated with our hospitality precinct. I was astounded at how often parking and hospitality, food and beverage came up. Like almost equally to performance requirements. Parking. And I think there's a little bit of, and I was like, oh, you know, Founders is not bad for parking. No, actually turns out I was very wrong. Founders is terrible for parking. If you've got musical theatre, if you've got a Hamilton operatic, the car park will be full with crew before the audience even turns up. You've got quite often kind of the +50s who need to park off in the side streets. By the time you leave, it's dark. There have been evidence of small crimes that have happened, but people don't feel safe. If you're talking large dance schools, these are small children having to cross busy roads far away. So almost without exception, we were told that parking is inadequate at Founders, and if it was a refurbished decision, parking would have to be considered and addressed. Look, I think it's probably useful to open up to questions. So as I say, there is no one singing, you know, we all want the same thing, but it's understandable because they have very different needs and very different requirements. I'll just talk quickly at the end of rebuild. What will not work, and this was unanimous across everyone, what will not work is like for like. And that might not have been completely literal, but you've got to take on face value the people who are reading this document who may not understand some of the conversations that are going on at this table and in council. But when you interpret like for like, they're saying, well, it's pointless. That's pointless because there are so many things we know and we can learn in the development of a new theatre. So that a lot of that has to do with the acoustic treatment of classical music versus amplified music. Classical music doesn't work with a fly tower. And when I say classical, I'm talking orchestras and I'm talking choirs. You're on the stage, And even with no amount of this stuff in front of you, the sound goes straight up the fly tower. It doesn't project out, and you don't have the reverberation. So if you go to Wellington, or you can go pretty much anywhere with a population over 100,000 people, you will find there will be a concert chamber for classical music and a fly tower proscenium arch facility for theatre and performing arts. So ballet will go in the proscenium arch, but opera will go in the concert chamber. Sometimes it will go in both, but it's orchestras and choirs that need a concert chamber. Now we have got the best concert chamber acoustically in the country at the Academy of Performing Arts, but it seats 300. So the classical community are telling us it's an 800 to 1,000 seat concert chamber which is missing. The projected sound, the musical theatre, the amplified music, the theatre, the drama, fly tower, proscenium arch, but there's a great list when you go into this document and you find the musical theatre page. I've tried to break it down so it's super clear what their technical requirements are that are currently have not been met. Oh, here we go, at Founders. So now we're sort of, it's the ham-op, it's the touring, high-quality musical theatre experience. And a lot of the stuff we haven't been getting in Hamilton because Founders just hasn't been up to scratch. But look, I've listed them there. The size of the loading docks, the type of seating, the type of flying system, the access to the stage. So when we talk about access, we're not talking about just going in and off on the wings. We're talking about being able to come up through the floor. We're being able to go down through the floor. We'll be able to come from the front and come from the back. Now, that's pretty standard for any, future-proof, state-of-the-art sort of performing arts centre. So in the musical Wicked, the blacks in the scenery drops through the floor dramatically. These are the things that are becoming more standard in those kind of builds. So the comms system. Currently, all of the headsets where all the techies talk to each other back, they're hardwired. These need to be wireless. They can't actually, they have to take the comms to run over to tell something to those sort of things. Now, a lot of these may be budgeted, and we haven't had a list of what is in the refurbished budget, but we want to make sure if they're not, they are. Ceiling height backstage. At the moment in Founders, the ceilings do not accommodate standard clothing racks. So when you import a, say, large piece of musical theatre with their clothing racks, you can't actually get them through the door. They have to all be taken off, put onto smaller racks and then wheeled in. You can't get them up the stairs because we don't have lifts. So there's all these, I learnt so much. I hope you're learning too. An internal lift. Showers. There's not even one shower per green room. Now, when you're talking things like kapahaka, anything sweaty, dance, they need that number of showers. Toilets backstage need to be increased by 2 to 3 times. Insufficient fire exits. Dressing rooms need to be vastly increased, 30 to 40 people per dressing room. The position of the sound desk at the moment, I don't know, if you recall when you go into Founders and you go up that entranceway and it's a one entrance in and out, and kind of just behind you is the sound deck. They have LED screens, so the people sitting behind them are getting light pollution as they're trying to watch the stage. So it's a very, okay, this is 1962. They didn't have LED screens in 1962. So we can forgive them for that, but right now it doesn't work. The follow spot is, again, you think of the technology which was around in 1962. This is why these problems have compiled over 50 years. The follow spot is so far back that there's no accuracy. It shakes. It's incredibly difficult to get accurate hold on performers on the stage. I found this out. There is a dividing curtain for Founders to make it a smaller space. It hasn't worked for 10 years though. And even if it did, the problem would be is all the lights are behind it, so that's not very good. You close it off and then everyone's sitting in the dark anyway. And finally, the lighting box. Up the back is where the lighting techs sit, and in a show that, well, majority of shows require a stage manager. The stage manager needs to see her stage. Now, at the moment, that's 15 metres off centre, which means the stage manager can't see about 25% of the stage. So so when people say to you, it's so broken, there's so much to fix, that these are the things they're talking about. These are real serious compounding problems with the facility. Whew. What else can we talk about? I might open to questions.
Okay, all right. Questions, Councillor Mallett.
Thanks, Sarah. You said that your last bit of your presentation was a refutation or dispelling any thought that we should go like for like. That was the whole purpose of that discussion.
Thank you. Yes, I didn't really... Thank you, Gary.
Okay.
Yeah, shall I?
Yeah, you say it. Say, Gary, well done.
Yeah, Gary, well done.
You're probably the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So you're making
Choking on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm choking.
No, what you've got to understand, sir, is no one else tells him that.
No,
Yes, he's going to tell himself.
That's
I
from
understand
nowhere.
that. I fully understand.
Yeah.
So those are the issues. That's why people are saying like for like doesn't work. So there's two, so the two key reasons there are, one, like for like, well, of course we're going to improve those things, but there's so much to be improved. So people, when they hear like for like, they get worried.
Okay.
They're going to inherit. Let me finish. Yeah. Sorry, you gave me the opportunity. I'm going to take it.
So you're not giving me a chance.
Yeah, no. How does it feel?
Keeping to time.
The second part is that we have to address the acoustic issue of classical music versus projected music. That is the biggest issue. It's about orchestras and choral versus amplified music. So that's where the like for like doesn't work. Now, one more thing. So there's some options there. And look, and this gets into scary territory, I know, because this is not 1, 2 or 3. This is 4, 5 or 6. What could you do? You could build 2 separate facilities. You could build a concert chamber and you could build a new theatre. You could have a performing arts centre which has a concert chamber and a proscenium arch stage inside it. You could build a theatre, a proscenium arch theatre, and you could talk to the university about them having a concert chamber. That was suggested by one of the groups. That's not my idea, but it's a very valid suggestion. So that's a fourth. The fifth is you could build one theatre, and there are some acoustic treatments which would go some way. People called it sort of the 80% solution. You can build a sound shell which drops in through the fly tower, and it kind of helps the acoustic treatment of classical music. But people would see, given the investment and the time, that as a dangerous compromise when we've got an opportunity to get it right. So that's what we're talking about.
So just going on from that, you gave the analogy of you can't get rugby, cricket and soccer on the same field. And so you're now talking about orchestral versus stuff my daughter does. And so what you're doing is you've got a whole lot of users who don't actually want the same thing. They want something different, and that every time you build the building to appease one group, it changes your acoustics. Or I'm talking about things I don't know anything about, but it just doesn't sound like it.
Getting to the question?
Yeah. So, and each time we do that, it's for a smaller and smaller group. And this is going to sound like heresy to you, but is there some point at which we say, well, actually, we're just going to have to go to Auckland for that? Or we're going to have to go, because we've got airports for Africa, we've got a whole, there's so many stuff where local authorities have overbuilt. And they're magnificent facilities, but they just are too expensive and can't be maintained. They don't get enough usage. And we're kind of, yes, okay. So
everything you just said was incorrect. So what I said was that I didn't say that everyone wants a different thing. I said everyone has responded differently to the options that have been presented based on what their current position is. What I'm saying is everyone wants a theatre back. Some people are saying give it back tomorrow. Some people are saying we're prepared to wait.
But
now, if I could magic up, let me finish,
Hold
please.
on. Yeah, Gary, just let it finish.
If we could magic up a state-of-the-art, complete theatre tomorrow, everyone would be happy. But that's not the option you've given, that this has been given to the community. And fair enough, we have to explore those options. We can build a state-of-the-art new theatre that will satisfy everyone. There isn't going to be one single solution here that's going to keep everyone happy. We all know we're dreaming if that's going to happen. But what I can say, what you said just then was completely, well, two things, well, actually, most of it. One of the things is that everyone can be satisfied with one facility. It's how we get there and what that looks like, because what that facility looks like wasn't explained in here. They're explaining their needs. How they get there is the issue. The second thing is, if you think for 1 second this community is going to be satisfied with getting on trains, planes and automobiles and going to Auckland, Tauranga and Taupo, then you're deluded, because that is not what this community wants. That is not valuing this community. That will be the death of this community.
Death? Death of who?
Cultural death, which I know doesn't mean a lot to you, Gary, but it's really significant to 80% of your ratepayers who've said they either want this theatre rebuilt or refurbished.
All right,
Touched
other
a nerve,
questions,
didn't we?
Councillor Mallett?
It's what we do, Gary.
I've got Councillor Wilson next, and then Councillor Gallagher.
Thanks, Sarah. Look, I don't come to Gary Mallett's defence hardly ever, but I would say we're all entitled to ask questions, and you may have a strong position or opinion, but I would hope you would express that in a constructive way, because I think we...
That was constructive, Ewan, and I've just sat so many times and watched...
Okay, stop.
Okay,
I'm not going to
finish.
have that kind of banter. Time is of the essence here.
All
So
right.
what's your question?
So I've
To the
got a couple of questions. The first question is, in light of the difficulties that we as a broader community had with Claudelands, satisfying all of the very important but very different groups that wanted to use that facility with all of their particular interests, I'm just asking you to again to assert your confidence of your earlier statement, which you said you were confident that all the very different groups that you've communicated with would be able to be satisfied with a single new facility. Because you've asserted that. You've said, I am sure that that all of these very different groups will be able to be satisfied in one facility. I just want to hear you say that again in light of the Claudelands experience.
Okay, let's be clear. The vast majority will be. There will be things that cannot be, for example, a kapa haka event. Audience of about 4,000 people. No one is going to ask for a founder's refurb or rebuild to have 4,000 seats when we know Claudelands has 5,000.
Thank you. That's all I needed to know. So I just wanted
That would be the exception, I would say.
I wanted some accuracy. The second
yeah.
question. The second question. When I look at the original Founders Theatre, what really warms the cockle of my heart is the fact that the community funded it. I think that's amazing. In your discussion with all of these very different groups,
Yeah.
of which a lot of information has flown out of, which is very helpful, were you able to get a feel for their willingness to participate and help fund this facility? And if so, to what quantum? Because, and I guess the third limb of the question is, you didn't get the impression that they assumed that the council would fund it all, right? There obviously will need to be significant corporate and special interest groups of which they're at the heart. Could you help me understand that better?
We didn't ask that question because that's not the question we were asked to ask, but I can tell you discussions sometimes went in that direction. As ratepayers, they were happy to see rates, a portion of their rates applied to a new build. And there was also significant discussion around an opportunity for council to be talking to community groups philanthropists and central government around a partnership. I don't think there was any... It's hard to say, as I say, because it wasn't a specific question we asked, but when the conversation did come up, there was a general assumption it would be a collaborative funding event. It wouldn't be council footing the whole bill.
But did you get the feeling they're prepared to write a cheque and put
No,
some money in?
no, it's clearly the role of council to facilitate that fundraising.
Okay, so my final question is, there's a very clear divergence of opinion of what is required to satisfy each group, but the one thing they're united about is that they don't want to pay for it.
No, that's not true, because we didn't ask that question. If you'd like me to go back and ask them that, I will, but I can't. I can't answer that question.
I would have assumed that would have rolled out of the conversation.
Well, no,
There was a lot of things that could have rolled out of the
no,
conversation. That wasn't one of the questions.
She wasn't asked to ask that question, so I think she's answered it. Right, Councillor Gallagher, you had questions?
Yes.
I'm mindful of time here. So, so focus on the question you want to ask.
Oh, no, I'm not going to ask questions.
Have you got no
No,
question?
I mean, I don't think any point with that interjection.
No, look, guys,
Thank you.
what I'm saying is, sometimes it's about, let's do a 3-minute lead-in before I get to my question, or actually ask the question.
Oh, I think
I'm
with respect, you're
encouraging
being
you
a
to
little
ask the
discourteous.
question.
I'll be clear and concise. You are being discourteous to me. I want to go back, and I'm not wanting to defend Councillor Mallett. If I'm in the UK, this is not going to be a 3-minute lead-in.
Come on.
Hometown Doncaster, Sheffield down the road. So in terms of a performing arts
Just
venue,
speak in your mic.
just being mindful of the proximity of Auckland, I'm just trying to get the right fit.
Microphone, Mark.
Sorry. So really, in terms of obviously support of performing arts venue here, Creative Waikato, we are, 130k down the expressway from Auckland. Where is, if you like, the right mix in terms of, I guess, the level of a performing arts venue? Because presumably AAT Centre and others would be on a slightly different level.
The creative infrastructure plan, which was presented to you 2 years ago, made it very clear that the Waikato needs and should have a performing arts facility of the size and capability of Founders. What you've got to keep in mind is this isn't just about audiences going to watch creativity. It's about your own community creating creativity, creating shows, performing on their violin, dancing on their stage, acting in their play. If they don't have a facility here to do that, then they'll leave.
Performing. So the other thing too, which you've picked up as you have, around the potential for central government funding mix, if this is a regional facility, I guess, and I've asked this question of Creative Waikato because of your regional role, what would be a reasonable, do you think, or does Creative Waikato think, a regional funding mix? Because obviously it's trying to look at all sources of revenue,
It would
funding.
definitely be worth exploring.
And the other question, would you just mind coming back and summarising Creative Waikato's ideal scenario in terms of, from the point of view of the Creative Waikato, what is the sort of, from your perspective, just repeat again the ideal scenario that we would arrive at 5, 6, 7 years' time?
The Creative Waikato perspective and the Creative Waikato board perspective reflects the bulk feedback we've had from the creative community, which also reflects the wider community. You cannot separate. Audiences are the community. And our recommendation is that there is a new build, an aspirational, state-of-art build. The general preference seems to be in the inner city rather than on the existing site, but the critical part of that is that there is acknowledged and implemented support for the activity that won't have a venue in the interim, and there's possibly a number of ways that could be explored.
And the Founders continues to form some kind of community town hall type function in the long term?
That was mentioned by quite a number of groups. Whether or not that's feasible, I don't know.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Leary?
Just one question. What exactly is the difference between a performing arts centre and a Founders Theatre? Being if we did, I know we don't want to do like for like, but if we did have new just Founders, what's the main?
Oh, it's probably just nice language. I mean, Founders really is a performing arts centre, but I think the general consensus would be that Performing Arts Centre probably has a little bit more than one facility. It can cater, it's a little bit more multi-purpose. And so, for example, it could cater for effectively and technically classical music and performing arts.
Okay, so I sort of had in my mind that it would, you know, there might be, I don't know, artists and like a little bit more of a hub as well as the big theatre in it.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what I was saying before. There was significant emphasis on the importance of it being a hub and that it was connected to good parking, inner city vibrancy and hospitality areas.
Okay, Councillor Pascoe.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for the detailed report. I think it's most useful for this process. My question, in the 4 points that you raised at the beginning, number 1 was about being aspirational and future-proofing. I couldn't find anything in the report to suggest whether or not either a rebuild or a refurbishment of a theatre of roughly the same size of the Founders Theatre would in fact hit the right spot with that aspirational or future-proofing. But was there any sort of feedback as to whether or not the 1200 plus size theatre is the right size going forward?
Sure. So the number of seats does vary on the group, but that's not an issue. But the general consensus was 1200 is about right. The anomaly is Kapahaka. And in that was an incredibly constructive focus group, and they were initially advocating very strongly for particularly a river-placed new centre of around 4,000 seats. But then, you know, and then said, well, look, Claudelands is far from ideal for many reasons, and we could go into that, but I won't, we've run out of time. But if some financial accommodation could be made there, why build 2? Take Kapahaka out, 1200 seems to be about right. And so it's not about our audiences get bigger, it's actually about frequency of use. Once you get beyond 1200, sightline, you don't see as well, it's a bit of a cavern, the experience isn't as good. But one of the things that was discussed quite regularly is many of you who have been to the theatre and other places know that many theatres, rather than just having one long rake, have a dress circle. So you still have 12, you could go up to 14, 1500. If you have a dress circle, you still have quite a lot of intimacy with the stage.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions for Sarah? No? Look, Sarah, thanks very much for that. Thanks for your report. Thanks for your summary and everything. And look, there may ultimately be more questions as we work through this, but I know you work with us as a partner.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for all the work you did in convening all of those groups and for your feedback today. It's been, I think, really helpful, and your report's really good. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right. Next speaker, we've got the Hamilton Civic Choir. Hello, Sally. How are you? Come on down. So, Sally, we've allocated 10 minutes for you to speak, and they'll ding a bell with a minute to go. That 10 minutes does include questions, and the councillors have read your submission. So, off you go.
All right. I'll start with what we as singers do.
She's got to sing.
E te ariki, whakarongo mai ra kia mātou. It's particularly poignant in this Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori. That is a waiata e te ariki, and loosely translated it says, Lord, hear us. As chair of Hamilton Civic Choir, we've got some things to be very proud of in the current organisation. We are 70 years old this year, which is probably roughly the average age of our audience members. And as Sarah has said, and it's a constant worry for arts organisations. We perceive that, you know, our white-haired audience are perhaps passing on to the next phase of life or death, but we tend to forget that they're renewed from the bottom. So We have some challenges, as all arts organisations do, and this is not a Hamilton problem, it's not a New Zealand problem, it's an international, global problem. The arts are the fabric, the vibrancy of a community, of a city, of an organisation. Why is it that our legal firms and our accounting firms invest in large pieces of static art or sculpture? It's because there's a human pleasure that's derived from the experience of enjoying that piece of art. And the human experience in live performance is as important. Personally, I've been to Bilbao, and there's some well-documented studies of the Bilbao or Guggenheim effect, the economic and financial benefit to that city, which was dying, of installing an incredible museum. Similarly, I've been to Columbus, Ohio. Their downtown project to revive a dying city included strong components of performing arts venues. The vibrancy, again, from a personal perspective as an artist, it's exciting, but there is a strong financial and economic benefit, again, well documented. We've got some thought leaders around the world. Richard Florida, who wrote a book in the early 2000s about the rise of the creative class and what that brings to a city. Charles Hardy, again, another great thought leader, looking at the interface between civic infrastructure and the community and the creative performers. They are well documented. I don't need to repeat those here. What I'm here to talk about, though, is as civic choir, and this is repeating some of what Sarah has said. We have an acoustic in Founders Theatre which is completely unsuitable to classical music performance. As Hamilton Civic Choir, we have a strategy now with a stronger collaboration with the University Music Department and with the newly formed Orchestras Central, so that we are positioned as collaborative and collaborating rather than competing for the same audience. And that brings with it potentially audience growth. So the Gallagher Centre, Gallagher Concert Chamber at the University of Waikato is entirely unsuitable for that size of audience, although it has documented the best acoustic in New Zealand. The simple shape of Founders with its fan, if you know anything about sound and physics, sound travels outwards, fans outwards, but it dissipates. So those at the back of the theatre, if we have unaugmented sound, actually can't hear clearly what it is that we're trying to achieve. So Gallagher Concert Chamber, 240 to 300 seats, bums on seats, that's not enough for a civic choir, not a civic choir performance, and it's definitely not enough for a performance where we're collaborating with the young artists that are coming through the university and the orchestras that we're aiming to form. Well, we are working towards forming a strategic alliance. So we were there in numbers at the Creative Waikato process, strongly supporting, and this has been through our membership of the choir and through our choir committee as well, strongly supporting a rebuild option. We're prepared to forego the larger experiences of choral and orchestral collaboration for a period of time because we believe so strongly Hamilton needs an events centre that is based around classical music. We do accept that there is that concern of proscenium arch with sound disappearing upwards, but clever design, possibly some moving parts, can overcome a lot of our concern around choral and orchestral music production versus the musical theatre production and the ballet and those types of things. I mean, the simple size of Founders stage as it is, even if we were to extend an apron, still doesn't give us the joy of being able to put on a large performance of a Verdi Requiem, for instance, where you'd have 120 singers and 80 or so orchestral players on that stage at the one time. So we've gone through our own process of talking with our members, seeking feedback, and that feedback started with, could we refurbish because we would get back into theatre sooner. And the more we thought about the concerns about the aspects of Founders, not just as a venue for performing, but as a venue for our audience members. They are concerned about the safety of walking the back streets. They are concerned around the state of the bathrooms, for instance. entertainment and the excitement of an experience of that classical music doesn't extend in the current Founders Theatre to being able to sit and chat and have a drink or a meal or whatever else. So strongly the rebuild, and also strongly with the idea of a public-private partnership. We need sufficient parking. There's not a parking building that I know of that doesn't make money. There will be investors potentially out there wanting to create, and we have some parking downtown. Our thoughts as a choir committee are actually linking the zone around the river plan to a town hall. There's actually a history there in 1912. There was a civic hall on what is now the Age Concern site. So there's some history there as well. So we've got Civic Choir saying, this please rebuild. Then there's me, Sally Rosenberg. I'm a first generation Hamiltonian. My parents came here as some of the founding lecturers at the Waikato University. So I don't have years of history here in the Waikato. I've got my mere 51 years. Founders was always an exciting place to go back in the 60s and 70s. But then a child's view of what is exciting is somewhat different to an adult's view of what is exciting. If I think about Hamilton in terms of economic zones, we've got the rugby, the cricket, we've got the bowls and the tennis and the squash stadiums. That's a sports area. It's not a creative centre for Hamilton. We have our main street with banks and some retail, which I must say as a citizen, it desperately needs some more life and some more energy. We have a river plan, which has been accepted. We have the downtown, the nighttime economy of Hamilton is stunning. And so the type of entertainment that we're talking about with evening performances augments that nighttime economy. So my suggestion as a citizen of Hamilton is that we look to rebuild, we look to recite within a sensible economic zone, and that the creativity, the buzz that comes with all of that, it may take 5 to 7 years to build what we need. But we're prepared to wait.
Okay, Councillor Wilson, you've got a question?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Sally, for your presentation and your writer at the beginning. Just a very quick question. In the last 12 months, when your group's been performing at the university, what's your load factor been like? How many seats are you selling out every night when you perform?
We actually haven't performed at Gallagher in the last 12 months. Prior to that, we have had only one performance. That's been the way that Civic Choir have created their experience. So we would be loading on the most popular programs, we would be overselling tickets. Right.
So, sorry, I'm a little confused. So you, although that's the best sound facility in the country, you haven't performed there in the last 12 months?
No, as with many organisations, we have to mind our budget.
Okay. Sorry, and the other question you raised on an economic argument, Bilbao, and it's an amazing place, and my wife and I have spent a lovely weekend there. Is that a fair comparison in light of the fact that Bilbao has access to 400 million people within a 2-hour flight journey in the heart of Europe, prior to Brexit, so it's probably 70 million less. Is that really an argument you could advance in comparison to Hamilton at 150,000, or if we're really lucky, 300,000 people?
I think to minimise our audience draw to that 150 or 300,000 is not reasonable. My dream would be that there'd be people from Wellington saying, hey, look, this thing's on in Hamilton, let's go, because it's an amazing centre.
But even with that, you've performed not at all in the last 12 months.
We have performed, absolutely, but we've performed at venues that cost less than the Gallagher Concert Chamber.
Right.
So we were booked to do the Verdi Requiem in collaboration with Bach Musica and Auckland Choir and Orchestra in October this year. Unfortunately, we won't be doing that, so we're going to use St Paul's Collegiate Chapel, and we'll also be performing at the Auckland Town Hall.
Councillor O'Leary.
Yeah, just clarification. Thanks, Sally. your submission actually says build new, but you mentioned several times strongly for rebuild.
I beg your pardon, I meant build new.
Okay,
Sorry for clarification, build new.
great, thank you.
Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you. 10 seconds. 10 years, so it doesn't happen for 10 years. What, and I'm picking up on Creative Waikato's good suggestions around the transitional arrangements. What assistance or help would you be looking for from council, I guess, in terms of a 10-year transition period? Just in terms of the point of what is needed to keep your group, your wonderful group, vibrant, because obviously if a facility is up to 10 years away, you know, in terms of final completion, is there anything we need to do in the interim?
At the moment, we have a 3-year rolling funding from council
Right.
as part of your arts
Yes.
program, which we're very appreciative of.
Right.
That gives us access to hiring venues, hiring the quality of musicians and accompanists that we want to keep our quality up to date. We wouldn't be looking directly to council for any other support, maybe on a case-by-case basis through the community funding application process. If there were available options, relief of costs for venues, for instance, if we were to put something together that could be performed in part of Claudelands Event Centre, we would come and ask on a sort of case-by-case or project basis.
But without putting words in your mouth, you could contemplate up to a 7 to 10 year
Yes,
journey.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Sally, very much.
Thank you, Julie.
Councillor Gallagher, I'm going to commend you on your question answering technique.
Well, I appreciate your
I
coaching,
actually
Your
have to
Worship.
say,
I always like mentors
the
in my
way in
life.
which you're
Never too old
approaching
to
them.
learn.
with
Never too old to learn.
So I'm writing a little note to give you a gold star
Thank
at the
you.
end of it.
Especially for a
Right?
new
Fantastic.
And as a new council, I need guidance.
It's a new way of doing it. It's wonderful. Okay, the next speaker is Leonard Gardner. Leonard, is Leonard here? Hello, Leonard, how are you? So I've got you down as representing, I'm not sure, is it Momentum you're here about? Or?
I'll clarify that.
Okay, oh, right, okay, very good. All right, we've allocated you 10 minutes and a bell rings, and as you can see, councillors do have questions, so if you can keep it short.
I'll try and
Good.
keep it short on all 5 pages.
Right.
Thank you, Your Worship, and councillors, for the opportunity to speak. Yes, the submission is recorded under my personal name, and just reflect on the last time I sat here, I was actually talking about the Hamilton Gardens and submitting on trying to move that forward, and that's a fantastic success that, you know, really happy that's going ahead. But this submission is actually given in my capacity as the chair of Momentum Waikato. The submission is not a position held by the trustees of Momentum Waikato, because actually it's not about us. We are here to serve generous Waikato donors who have approached Momentum Waikato to convene and connect interested parties around the Founders Theatre discussion. These generous donors believe that we have an opportunity to deliver an iconic world-class theatre facility here in Hamilton, and they want to be a part of making it happen. Momentum Waikato's role is to encourage generosity in our community, helping generous people and organisations to be a part of creating a better Waikato for everyone forever. Our submission is based on generous Waikato donors and community funders working in alignment to leverage off money Hamilton City Council has committed to the refurbishment of Founders Theatre. Our submission is based on the Waikato community taking responsibility for the delivery of a new theatre that provides our creative talent and our local community with a place they can stand up tall in. The cost of the delivery of such a significant community asset should not rest solely on the Hamilton City Council and their ratepayers, but should be contributed to by those in the community who want to be a part of creating a better community for everyone. Momentum Waikato's submission on behalf of our generous donors is to provide the Waikato community with an option for a new theatre by taking responsibility for the delivery of the project and funding the cost of the project over and above the Hamilton City Council commitment. The effect of this will be to limit the Hamilton City Council's capital funding requirement. In discussion with the generous donors, they have a concern for ensuring good process is followed to enable the new theatre project to have the greatest opportunity to succeed. There are many risks on a public project of this nature that have the potential to cause division within a community. Everyone has a personal opinion on what is iconic, where a theatre should go, the size requirements, what is value for money, and the colour of the stage curtains. Our generous donors, well, having personal opinions, are willing to show support so long as good process is followed to achieve the best community outcome. Good process needs to be established in order to give everyone involved in the project confidence. Our donors have put forward a process which includes the following. Number one, the establishment of an appointments panel with representatives from the major funders, Creative Waikato and the Hamilton City Council. Number two, the appointments panel taking responsibility for appointing a panel of experts to oversee the theatre delivery project. This panel of experts would include theatre operations specialists, experienced theatre architects, experienced property consultants, and cost planners. This panel of experts would determine confirming the community theatre needs, leveraging off the report previously produced by Creative Waikato, identifying the best location for a new theatre, given regard to Hamilton's aspirations as a city, and leveraging off other opportunities where possible, identifying the best theatre type to serve the Waikato, taking into regard the ethos of not leaving any existing users behind, and a cost plan and programme of works, which sound a little bit less exciting. The panel of experts present a recommendation to the appointments panel, and the appointments panel will take responsibility for ensuring full funding is in place for the delivery of the project and confirm the recommendations or otherwise. We believe this new theatre project can be completed in a 3 to 5 year time frame if the process is able to be completed as described above and outside of the political arena. The Waikato is blessed to have people and organisations who are generous and want to contribute to making the Waikato a better place for everyone forever. We look at the legacy and the impact of those in the Waikato who have made the Waikato a better place, starting with the families who were part of the original Founders Theatre construction, through to the more recent Advantage Rome development that has brought about transformational change in the Waikato region. A new, iconic, world-class theatre will help redefine Hamilton and become a jewel in Hamilton's crown alongside the fantastic Hamilton Gardens. We realise time is of the essence in making a decision on the Founders Theatre. Hamilton has a strong creative arts community, and this is at risk of being lost over time if a suitable solution is not found. What they really need is certainty on what is happening. Should our submission be of interest to the Hamilton City, Momentum Waikato will be looking to provide a commitment to convene these generous donors and community funders to confirm support towards the ability to fund a new theatre. This will involve completing the steps described above in order to give the project some structure for these donors and funders to support. We believe this can be achieved in a 3-month time frame. Hamilton City needs to be prepared to play their part in committing to the agreed funding, including the taking responsibility for the ownership, maintenance and operation of a new theatre. Momentum Waikato's role is to convene, to connect and to align generous people in the Waikato to create a better Waikato for everyone forever. We are here to serve generous donors by ensuring their generosity is leveraged to make the greatest positive impact on the community that we all love and Sydney they love. A new theatres project provides an opportunity for the Hamilton City Council to work in partnership with the community to deliver a world-class, iconic theatre that we can all stand up tall in. Thanks.
Thank you, Leonard, very much. I think that's clear what you want to say. Questions? Councillor Leary, did you have a question?
Yeah, just how much do you want us to put in?
Give us opportunity to pull together a proper report and we'll define that.
So you would have seen the options that we went out with and the questions that we asked around the price tags of rebuild at 20 million and you at 50 million.
Yes.
And then you would have seen the follow-up question of those that wanted to rebuild, whether it was capped.
Yeah.
So I think, what was that? That was 30 million.
Yeah.
So I know it's early days, but we are here to make decisions.
Yep.
Do you have any indication of your generous donors of how much they would be willing to put in?
If the council was able to commit to the $30 million,
30, yep,
we'd be able to make the rest work. We'll be looking to make the rest work.
okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so if I could just clarify, what you're saying is you would take a leadership role in convening the partnership with the council, and also what I heard you say was basically that you would take responsibility for convening the panel that would actually oversee the project delivery.
That's correct, yes.
Right, so in other words, in simple terms, if the council said this was our contribution, you would then manage, or the panel would then manage the delivery.
That's correct. And obviously the City Council would have some representation
Yes.
on that appointments panel. Yeah.
Right, okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Pretty clear.
No? Yes, councillor King?
Can I just clarify, you did say outside the political arena?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Gallagher?
Your thoughts on regional contributions? Given Tamahiri and these places are not Hamilton City ratepayers?
Hasn't factored into our thinking.
All right, thank you, Leonard, for coming along and sharing that with you, with us. That was very clear and well
So there's no more
articulated.
questions?
No, there are no more questions. I think people are, right.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thanks.
All right, we're now going to stop and have a cup of tea, which is probably a good idea. And we're back, just let me make sure we know when we're back. It's going a little bit over. Okay, so we're back at 10:02.
you.